Guys, I want to welcome you to another episode of the Advisory Board podcast, where we bring in experts from the franchising community. And I'm privileged today to have a friend of mine join. This is actually round two. She was with us in season one, so it's been like 2.5 years. But Angela Coté, if you don't know her already, and I'm glad you wore red today, because once you wore green, I was like, who is this person? And she is phenomenal. A CEO, founder of AC Inc., which they're the experts in field coaching. And if you guys have any challenges with your field coaches to try to develop a strategy around improving franchisee performance from cradle to grave, like that's why we've got her here today. But she's been in franchising since she was five, guys. So it's been at least 20 years, as you can tell by her age. So Angela, tell us a little bit more about you, about kind of the shift that you guys have gone through in the last like 12 to 18 months about really focusing in on field service. I'd love to hear from you about that.
Thank you. I'm so excited that I get to hang out with you, Dave. This is always really fun. Okay, so my background, for anybody that doesn't know, is that I grew up in franchising. My dad is the founder of a franchise company called M&M Food Market. It started back in 1980. And so, yeah, I was five sitting in the back of the store. Any of us that have parents that were entrepreneurs or small business owners can certainly relate. It's the easiest way to just babysit your kids, child labor, right? So, the key points though in my journey that have led to where I am now were my time in the late 90s when I was fresh out of school. I was in the field supporting franchisees. It was like my dad was like, we had an area developer in Western Canada. So I was in the Toronto area where I lived. And we had this area developer trying to develop Western Canada. And my dad was like, why don't you go out? They're looking for someone to do field support. They need an extra person. You know the brand, you live and breathe it. You should be fine. Go sends me out. And oh my gosh, like it was way harder than I thought it would be. I was like, oh, this will be fun. I'm going to be traveling around. But supporting franchisees, especially as a young female founder's daughter, and these older, often male franchisees had invested $400,000, and their life savings, and they're like feeling all the feels. They're afraid, they're nervous, and who shows up to help them be successful? Me, right at that stage. So you can imagine I got put through the ringer. I'll pause there and then I'll tell you about being a franchisee if you want, but just want to make sure I'm on the right track.
No, no, this is beautiful. Like I love the story because as you're telling, I'm just envisioning this adorable, like cute girl, blonde out of college, like, hey guys, I'm here to help. And they're like,
Yeah.
you weren't even born when I started my first business. Like, what can you possibly tell me, right?
Exactly. That is
Yeah.
exactly the comment. And the thing is, the person in the field already is a punching bag for the franchise company. So that person is the front line to the franchisees. And so you get blamed for things even just because of the role. So
Mhm.
now,
Yeah.
you're sitting there with no credibility and young and female and pretty cute, energetic, and oh, this is gonna be fun. And so yeah, I learned a lot in those years. Definitely things that I, obviously love that I got to have that opportunity and learn what I learned, but definitely got put through the ringer.
Mhm.
And then I became a multi-unit franchisee. We were ready to put stores on Vancouver Island. It was 2000, the year 2000. And it wasn't my plan, but it sounded kind of good because I heard Vancouver Island was quite beautiful. So it's true. I still live here now, but sort of switched paths from the corporate side, became a franchisee, got my own financing, and lived and breathed on that side, and then also got to see how the impact or lack of impact of franchisee support that we were getting, so that like from the field, and people showing up and telling us our light bulb was out, and like that's not going to help me grow my business. So that was also very enlightening for me. Well, no pun intended. I didn't mean that. And
That's
I
very,
don't know that I was enlightened. What's that?
I said, that's very clever though. Way to tie
Oh
the
yeah,
back into it.
just popped out. But and I actually shouldn't even say it was enlightening at the time. It was about 8 years ago when I was like starting to think about doing something different. The franchises were, my husband was running them, and they were running pretty smoothly. And I was like, I need to do something different. And and when people around me were like, well, you must have learned something over the years in franchising, that you could help people. And when I really looked at it, it was like there is a gap when it comes to how franchisees are being supported.
Mhm.
And I even when I was in that role, I didn't get coaching and training. Like I said, the brand, you can go do this.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I Yeah.
But I feel bad for that first consultant or the field coach that came to you, and they're probably like, "What am I possibly gonna teach Angela?" Right? I'm sure.
Actually, you're right. That did happen. That's actually really funny. That did happen. But actually, I don't know if you want to segue into this, but that is a great point.
Yeah, I think we should. No, so, yeah, make the point though, please.
Okay, so yeah, it's true, right? Like when it came to here's the thing, when it came to running the business or operating the store, operating the business,
Mhm,
I was awesome. I could, identify customers' needs and suggest other products and increase the average sale.
mhm,
Awesome. I could organize the freezer. I could keep the store tidy. But when it came to being a business owner, I'm maybe going off on a different point right now,
mm.
but first of all,
Good point, though.
when it came to being a business owner, I sucked.
Okay.
So, who when someone called in sick, who showed up to fix that? Me, right?
Yeah,
Like yeah, me. And when a customer came in yelling at us and threatening to tell all their friends how terrible of experience they had or whatever,
mhm,
me, right?
yeah,
But how then could I get away? Right? How do I get away from this? I thought my business was indispensable without me,
mhm.
but or that I was indispensable. That's
Yeah,
the way I
you
meant to
that's
say
what you
that.
meant, yeah.
Yeah. Uh and now, yeah, so that's where I guess I'm saying that's the first point of what I could have used help with
Mhm,
from a field person. Like, hey, like, okay, you're good when it comes to customer service and selling and the product information and all that. But, you know, I noticed you're working. If they would have said, like, let's help you get out of working so much in the business so you can work on it, that would have been a good starting point.
yeah. Well, and I think you're bringing up a really important point. Guys, what we wanna talk about today is field coaching, right? Like, help developing the team, developing a strategy. A lot of franchisees, they launch and they've got franchise development, they got marketing, they got local unit, operations kinda buttoned up, and that's a good franchise. It's creating profit for the owners. What they don't have is the infrastructure to take that owner from, like, baby, step 1, but and every brand has this problem, and if you're listening, you're a franchisor, you have this problem where you've got an owner who's been through launch, they're successfully operating, and now they feel like you've got nothing of relevance to give them and, provide value anymore, right? Because your field coaches are only good at getting the babies out of the crib, and
Yep.
so and so we're gonna talk about that today, guys. Like, I
Yeah.
want you to pay attention to Angela not only because she's fun, right, and spunky, but she has done this and she professionally coaches people how to do it. And so, if you don't mind, Angela, let's talk about that. Let's talk about first of all what's shifting. This whole industry of franchising is kind of getting inspected and dissected right now from lots of different angles. What are you guys seeing? Since you have these roundtables that are fantastic, by the way. Anyone who's listening, you can go to their AC Inc. roundtables and just listen
Yep.
in, join, listen into experts. It's phenomenal.
They can go to our website just so they know, and there's a spot there they can put through a form for roundtables. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and you're the reason I bring it up is you are listening for years, right, to people and all the challenges. So tell us what's changing right now with
Yeah.
field coaching.
Well, start with what we kept hearing and keep hearing. That's leading to what needs to change and what we're trying to make change. Is my franchisees are being kind of going back to this. They're being good operators, but not being good business owners,
Mhm.
and they're stuck working in their business. And sometimes it's because they like it. The franchisee thinks they like it at least,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's because they're literally just stuck and they don't know how, they need help. Either way, they really need help, but some of them want to get to the next level but can't get there because the coaching or the support, not even coaching, the support they've traditionally been getting is, when you say to a franchisor and they say, we do everything, we have a great operations manual, we've got the LMS in place, we've got CRMs in place, I'm talking your language here, right? We've got they can call us anytime they need us, we've got a franchise business coach for them. But then they're not, but we look at what they're actually doing, and the franchise business coach or field coach, they're called all different things. We use field coach just as a generic term, but
Mhm.
different brands, of course, use different names. But that person isn't able to, they're not being trained and coached on how to actually coach the franchisee, which means things like, hey, Dave, you're a franchisee.
Uh-huh.
What are your goals? Like, where do you see yourself in 10 years? And let's reverse engineer that and get you on that path and hold you accountable and help you stay motivated to your goals, not do it for you. That's something franchisors often get wrong is they think they're like, we're very into hand holding. I'm like, that's not good because now you're not creating independence.
Mhm.
What the traditional is this, we call it a couple different things. We call operational support or often reactive hotline support, like firefighting support. And what franchisors are recognizing now that their franchisees need, and some progressive brands are doing this, is this proactive strategic growth coaching. That's the way we describe it. And that's this goals, reverse your goals. And that also means doing tough things as a coach, like showing up on a, say we have, I'm your coach, your field coach, your FBC, and we show up on our bi-weekly call or whatever that cadence is, and you start just venting about all the difficulties, which I sympathize. But hang on a minute, this is a coaching call. First of all, I'm going to listen to you and help you, like, with your mindset and calm down. Like, I'm going to listen. I'm not going to just tell you not to tell me that stuff, but
Right.
at some point as a coach, I need to segue that and go, we're on this call so that I can help you grow.
Mhm.
Now, we can like we can vent about staff short challenges all day long, or we can look at, like, here's the growth plan. What do we need to focus on right now? And if it is this thing you're venting about, fine. But that's the difference between coaching and showing up on a call and just being like, okay, what can I help you with today? And then
Mhm.
help you solve all your problems and then get off the call. And I feel awesome because I was so helpful. And you feel good because you're in the moment, problems are kind of gone,
Mhm.
but it's not a long-term outlook. So that's the big shift that we're seeing and we're trying to drive at AC Inc.
Right, and guys, some of you who've listened, you know I was a high school varsity hitting coach, right? And, like, I would have kids show up that were great athletes that had a pretty good swing, but they wanted to hit the ball over the fence, and there was no way they were gonna do that unless they changed some of the mechanics. So I had to unravel before I could build, and,
Right.
like, and it's the same thing, right? And you got these guys. Can we talk about life cycle for a minute? Because there's, like, this thing that people don't talk about in franchising very often, which is I've got franchisees coming into the system, and generally speaking, all of the coaching is just to help them operate with efficiency. And that's
Yep.
pretty much it. But they're not thinking about, well, that works well for a 1 to 2 year or 0 to 2 year franchise owner. But now
Yeah.
what happens from 2 to 5? What happens from 5 to 10? How do I make sure between 5 and 10 they're buying more territories and they're expanding successfully and they're getting out of the business and they're working on the business and never in the business? Like, can you share your experience on that life cycle of what a franchisee should be going through?
Yeah, well, that's such, I love the way you put that. That's good because I a lot of people do talk about the different stages, but to actually think of it as a life cycle
Mhm.
that is inevitable, that's going to happen, right? Is a good way to look at it. Yeah, so I'll hit this way, just because we get, I'm also in the back of my mind are all the questions we get asked all the time, so I'm going to incorporate
Yeah.
that to some
Please,
extent.
please, please. Yeah.
So I do think that that operational efficiency is obviously that training and coaching is important from the beginning. You
Mhm.
know, in most cases, it's pretty rare that a franchisee can be successful if they don't have the operations figured out. Like, maybe, I guess what I meant by that is, like, maybe a sophisticated multi unit franchisee can bring their team in to do the work, but it's pretty rare that even if they're going to be, removed, you got to get that operational efficiencies part, and you got to know what's going on in the business. So that's primary, or like, yeah, priority. However, it's a mistake to not think about them as business owners and not talk about that in the early days.
Yeah.
We don't recommend that you go hard in the initial training on all the business stuff yet, because that's too much to take in. But you want to start introducing, like, when you're teaching a franchisee about, in the initial days, it's like we're teaching a franchisee about maybe how to, sell product. I keep thinking of my business, selling products to retail frozen food products at our business to
Yeah.
a family, right? A mom of a family comes in and but why don't we attach a KPI to that so that the average sale per customer, let's teach them that at the beginning, but that's just one little business bit, right?
Mhm.
But once they've nailed all that operational efficiencies and all that, we can go back to those little things we planted in the beginning about about being a business owner, looking at metrics and being comfortable, stepping back and things. We're going to talk about that, but then by the 2 year point for sure, and I would argue even sooner, but at least once they've gotten pretty comfortable in the operations, probably anywhere between 6 months and 2 years, you want to start to really introduce more of this strategic growth coaching where you're talking about, okay, what are your goals and what are some things we can do to get there? Let's measure, like, let's incorporate measuring the success. So, and then beyond 2 years, you can generally coach them a little less often, but still have touch points. So like a group coaching session, maybe every 2 weeks is a touch point, a
Yeah.
one-on-one. In 2 weeks, we're going to do a group session with some other franchisees that are at a similar stage as you. So things do change and the focus moves on, but it really should shift more towards always looking at the growth goals and, like you said, adding units and helping them get out of working in the business so they can work on it and grow further.
Yeah, I personally think, everybody wants to pretend like their new franchise concept is a semi-absentee business.
Right.
I think that they are not. However, I think every franchise should become an absentee business if you're teaching the business owner over the course of this life cycle how to operate a business so they can step
Yeah.
out of it, right? And or focus on getting the next franchise unit up and running, buying more franchise concepts that, yeah, that synergize with. I mean, there's so much that they should be doing at that stage, that the 3 to 5 year plus stage. I agree, but if you
Yeah.
don't have a path, you don't have a coach that's trained how to help them get there, how on earth are you getting your average franchise owner to that stage where they're working on their business exclusively and expanding their empire? I don't think it's going to happen naturally.
Right, right. I agree. I was just quick thing I can't resist saying about the absentee. Even the big multi-unit franchisees that have their like 30 Taco Bells and 40 of this, they're usually even still going into their locations. They're absent from the running of the business, but like there's still that. So just kind of, I don't know, I couldn't resist just throwing that in there. Um, but yeah, it's definitely it's a different way of looking at things when you get to those later stages. And then, I mean, we can talk about when they're 10 years and how that looks if you want too.
Yeah, well, that's contract renewal for almost every brand, right? So what happens at 10 years? Like what your experience, like what should, and this is the context here, guys, here is how should you as a franchisor be thinking about the franchisee journey so you can prepare for the 10-year plus, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there is no question that it is very human nature to get complacent.
Mhm.
I'm going to admit that because for us, we were in it 18 years and it was a tough thing because we were like, well, this is nice because we have some freedom and flexibility as business owners that you might not have as an employee. But you start to kind of think, well, we already, like, your mindset it does change. Some people anyway. You can tend to actually, I would argue, even engaged top performers that have been around 10, 15 years, not I would argue, I can guarantee they even go through this mindset thing where they start to get like, well, we've done that before and it didn't work, or yeah, we did that when we were new, but we don't doesn't make sense anymore. And
Yeah.
I'm saying this I from a story experiences that recently, a couple months ago, was able to do a speaking engagement workshop style with a group of President Circle franchisees, which were, I won't mention the brand, but they were over $1 million AUV. And it was very interesting because when I got on a call with a couple of them before we met, because I wanted to just hear from them a little bit and see where their mindset was at and what challenges they were perceiving to be their biggest challenges and things.
Mhm.
And in that initial call, it was like, felt this, even though they weren't outwardly blaming the franchisor, they weren't taking ownership of their like of what they could control and what they could do. And their big challenge was leading their teams, not the frontline people because they're removed. It was leading the managers.
Mhm.
That was their big challenge. And so when we met in person, it was so amazing to see them go from blaming external factors to taking ownership and recognizing, oh my gosh, it's me, I've been complacent. So the answer to what can we do with high performers or legacy franchisees is really dialing in on their mindset, and that coaches can do this if they're properly coached and trained, like
Right.
FBCs, field
Mm.
coaches, whatever they're
Yeah.
called in the brand. It's let's get into the mindset of what are they thinking,
Mhm.
and see if we have an expression we use, we didn't make it up, but we love it. If you can name it, you can tame it. So the first point with the top performers and the legacy franchisees is to understand what are they thinking. And
Mhm.
if they're thinking that, oh, the labor market is really tough right now. The one guy, he's a $7 million a year franchisee, and he admitted this. It was awesome talking to him because at the beginning, he's like, I had to hire like, I don't know, something like 146 of the frontline staff so that 75 would stay because they don't stay and they can't get through the training and all that. I'm like, let's look into that. So then throughout this
Yeah.
session we did,
Mhm.
by the end, he's like, it's me. I have not been properly leading them. I was too hands off, and it's a result of time, and again, that's why I say, like, it's sort of natural, right? That you're going to get to that point. So that's what I think people need to really be focused on when it comes to later in the
Yeah.
journey.
Well, and there's another dimension to that too, right? Field coaches need, or the support team or whatever you call them, right? FBCs. They need to be trained how to also help people. You talked about getting out of complacency. Totally agreed. But a lot of people that buy franchises are 45, 50, right? So they also need to be helping these folks that are hitting the 10+ year mark figure out legacy and figure out succession. And I won't
Absolutely.
share, I've got a good friend involved in the passing of a parent, and it's caused total turmoil in his world. And I feel awful because if there was a coach in place, there could
Mhm.
have been succession planning, proper documentation, proper everything, and like it would
Yeah,
have been a smooth. I mean, that's the one last thing you
exactly.
want to worry about, right? So, but these are critical things, guys. That you're if you haven't been thinking about this, like let's say you've got one unit today, you just started franchising, you still need
Mhm.
to think about this and have a plan and have a
Yeah.
structure. When I get people that are 2 or 3 years old, I've got to hire a new type of consultant or a coach that can come in and help them go
Mhm.
from where I want them to be at 2 years to where I want them to be at 5 years. That needs to be methodical and planned. And if you
Right.
don't have a plan, then well, we all know how the adage goes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's talk.
no, you're bang on with that, Dave. That was such like, yeah, it's also the exit plan, the succession plan. Those are things, and we find that franchisees. So this is, yeah, such a common challenge. We have a roundtable just for people in the field, and they open up about what are their biggest challenges. This is a common one. They say,
Mhm.
"How do I get, like I just started, or or whatever. I've kind of worked my way through the middle performers, but I've got this legacy franchisee that won't get on calls with me because he doesn't think I'm going to bring any value." They're like,
Uh-huh.
what do I do? And it's like, what if you were to go and ask, hey, what is your exit plan? Like, not in a challenging way, but hey, just
Yeah.
curious, do you have an exit plan? Can I see it? Would you be open to me maybe just being a soundboard? Maybe I can poke holes in it for you if you want. Like,
Mhm.
even if I look as a, say the coach says, even if I look at it and I'm not sure, I might be able to bring you the right resources to help you with this.
Yeah.
That's going to win over a legacy franchisee for the most part. I mean, it's not instant. It can take time to build trust and credibility, but
Mhm.
and again, those are things that need to be coached and trained, which is why we do what we do at ACA.
Yeah, right. No, I think you nailed it. Let's talk about a couple of the tough questions as well. I mean,
Yeah.
these are all tough questions that I hope you're getting a lot of value from this, guys. And I hope you recognize that Angela is also a very accessible person. Like you can reach out to her, you can,
Oh,
find her on the web, on LinkedIn, on her website. Like there are a lot
yeah.
of ways to reach her if you have questions about this kind of stuff. But first and foremost, go to the roundtables. I
I was
mean,
just gonna say, if you want to hang out every week, just get on the roundtable invite. Franchisors only. We do keep it for just franchisors so that it's peer to peer. But yeah,
I'm not invited, guys. Just so you know, I won't be
we'd
there.
love to have you, but we have a rule.
Yeah, I know, it's cool. Oh, keep the rules, keep the rules. So let's talk about, so we've talked about a lot of things that they can do, right? That we've talked about them not having like the spectrum that they're managing across the life cycle of a franchisee in their coaching strategy. What are a couple other things that you see not going great right now in the field with franchise, like with field coaching?
Hmm. Well, okay, a big one is the mindset that franchisors have around who to put in that role.
Yeah.
So one thing we fight a lot, or fight, or try to convince or help franchisors see, is that if you go and get somebody pretty junior without the right DNA and or the right coaching and well, you need both. You need some of the right DNA and probably some coaching and training
Hmm.
on these not just business technical things, but these leadership things, soft skills. They go get somebody, they put someone sort of junior in that role, pay them 50, 60,000 a year, and wonder why their franchisees are not performing and not wanting to meet with that person and not engaged.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. We struggle with a lot. The people ask, but what's the what's the ROI? People are here's this is kind of another one, but it's kind of connected.
Yeah.
Franchisors are so focused on sales and getting more franchisees,
Hmm.
and they leave the franchisees behind, right? So it's it doesn't make sense to me. You've got it's like to me, it's like if you have a customer, say for you, like a recurring
Hmm.
customer, like not recurring because they're signed up with you,
Right.
and you can either take care of them and maybe offer them additional services that you already have that they might need,
Right.
or you can spend the money to go find a new one. It's usually
It's way more effective to expand and keep than to go find.
yeah, and keep them
Always.
happy, right?
Yeah.
Happy and growing and all that stuff. So we call it unlocking the hidden profitability in your franchise system
Hmm.
when you focus on like not number of unit growth, but unit growth of the franchisees.
Hmm.
So that I don't know, that's an interesting one I find, especially with brands under about 100 units. I feel like it's a identity crisis thing or an ego thing, that they're like, I got to get to 100 units to prove myself. And it's like, yeah, okay, so you get 100 units and have 76 of them franchisees are not profitable, they hate you, and they're telling everybody it was a bad investment.
Right. Well, and let's talk about the end game too. So I did a podcast a little while ago with Tom Spadia talking about the exit plan and how you got to plan from the
Yeah.
beginning. It was super good. But like, if you're like, you don't realize that the investors are looking at growth of same store sales. Like that's a key metric
Yes.
to look at. So if you're like, I got 100 units, look at us, and they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, but your unit is you're soft. Like your middle here, your middle 66, 72%, they are not performing well, not well enough according to industry benchmarks. By the way, if you don't know those benchmarks, you should figure it out because
Mhm.
this is how they measure your success. So what Angela's saying is invest in this part of the business because in the end, one, it'll produce more royalties. It'll produce more, it'll reduce the
Exactly.
friction. They'll be happier, right? So like, I mean, there's so many reasons that are like, yeah, dum-dums, like let's do this. But you don't think about that because you're so worried about getting to 100 units. But yeah.
Exactly. I think the industry celebrates that way too much. I
Mhm.
think the industry, and I'm getting a little controversial here, but I think the industry celebrates the number, like, and makes franchisors feel like that's, and of course, I'm not saying don't celebrate getting to 100 units, and it's an exciting milestone, but it's, it's, there's just this, there could be this mess back over here. And I'm not saying don't try to grow that way either, but I
Yeah.
think it's a balance. Unless, I mean, it's not a balance. If your franchisees are all unhappy and struggling, then you don't even have it. You should get out of that sales zone.
You never get to 100 units anyway in that model. You'll get to
Yeah.
50 and then go to 20, right? That's the plan. That's the
Well,
plan. Yeah.
yeah, and if you grow really, yeah, exactly, you go exactly 50 to 20. But you also, if you grow really fast, you might get to 100 because the franchisees haven't gotten disgruntled yet. If you do 100 in like 2 to 3 years, you're probably still you're in they're still sort of in their honeymoon phase.
Hmm.
So just give it a little bit of time. I guarantee.
Yeah.
Not
It'll
negative.
work
I'm
its
trying
way.
to I'm just trying to not fear monger, but no, I'm trying to just help people understand this is the consequence. If you don't take proper care of your franchisees, and it's another issue that I think is different from then to now. If we were talking earlier about the past to now, is there's a lot more franchises out there, so there's so much more competition.
Mhm.
So the to become a franchisee, like to get people to become your franchisees. So like I think people used to get away with not really supporting franchisees,
Mhm.
but you can't get away with that anymore because
No, there's too much visibility too. I mean, there are tools like Vetted Biz out there. You can, pay $80 a month and like learn every benchmark statistic in every industry of every franchise concept. Like, and it's at your fingertips now. And the
yeah.
brokers are more savvy about these things. And so,
Mhm.
I mean, there's no way to escape the fact that this industry, we love the franchising industry. What a great group of people. And yet
Mhm.
there's some like skeletons in the closet. One of the
Yeah.
issues is like I agree, like if we focus too much energy on unit sales, it's like when I was in high school, we had no coaching. I was benching and curling all the time, and I never worked
Yeah.
on my legs. So when the wind blew hard when I played football, I'd fall over, right? Right. It's that's the industry, right? They're
Yeah.
focusing too much on the showy, flashy thing,
Yeah.
not on the thing that's the core, that's the structure that supports the upper body, right? So that was a pretty good metaphor, actually.
That was awesome. I love that. I want to say though, just be very clear. I am not meaning to sound negative. I know I get into a bit
Oh,
of
yeah.
like, but
Yeah.
I'm just trying to help people see the value of taking care. I think it's unethical not to take care of your franchisee. I don't just think it's pretty obvious, like
Mhm.
and you're going to crash and burn. So it's there. And I was going to say there are some really good franchisors out there, and oh my gosh. Well,
Mhm.
you know what I would say? Every single one of the franchisors that comes to our roundtables, they might not have it perfect, but they care
Yeah.
because the fact that they show up, not every week. We don't expect people to show up every week, but the fact that they show up to learn from other franchisors,
Mhm.
that says a lot. And the people that don't come back, it's usually because of ego.
Uh-huh. Well,
They're like, I don't need to hear this.
yeah, I think that there are a lot of opportunities in this industry. The beautiful thing about it is you can even have competitors that will go sit and have lunch with you and talk about the problems they
Yeah.
had when they were at your stage of your business, and it's a very open community for the most part. For the
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
people that wanna learn, they can. I appreciate you sharing that. I wanna ask you a couple of other questions, but you mentioned something, and I wanna go back to it. So, a key challenge that a lot of franchisors have is they're looking at their CFO's planning for the headcount rather than the owner or the CEO, right? And so they're trying to be budget conscientious, which is okay, but they're not hiring the right person to be the field consultant, the field coach. You
Mhm.
mentioned age, we mentioned mindset, we mentioned experience. What do you find is kind of the right combination of those
Yeah.
3 things to get the right person?
Yeah. Well, I'll even kind of lay this out a slight bit different. I would say the three buckets or categories. One is having good passion for the brand and or at least good understanding of the brand, like the operational, the brand, like I got it. I'll use myself, M&M back in the day. I loved the brand. I knew the brand. I was good there. Now, to be clear, these things can be coached and trained. I'm not saying they can't.
Yep.
So,
Mhm,
that can anyway. I meant to say. The second thing is business experience or business acumen. So
mhm,
that can also be coached and trained. And then the third thing is the soft skills, the coaching skills, the leadership skills, the soft skills. This can be coached and trained, but it's the thing that gets missed the most. So if
yeah,
you're looking, so I would say age isn't so much the issue. That was just because usually when people are younger, they maybe don't have some of the things, but they might.
right.
If I had had proper, like I kind of had the business side of things because I had grown up in business and I went to school for business. I had a degree in business. I hadn't lived and breathed as a business owner, but I could be trained that. But what I needed was this third one, coach me and train me on how to deal with franchisees that are yelling at me, how to get a franchisee to get on a call with me. So I
Mhm,
would say that's how you find them, is think of those three categories. I would say in that third category where I talked about coaching and all that, that's where I'd say the DNA of the person falls in. There
yeah,
are people that hate the idea of being coaches, and I think that's fine. They're not, but don't be a coach then. Like, don't put somebody who's not patient. Like some of the DNA would be like just patient in general, loving teaching people. Like, there's some DNA that needs to be there before we even coach and train them. So
yeah.
that's how I would answer that.
I totally agree with you. It's funny, there's this terrible adage, those who can do and those who can't teach and coach.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
and I do find it to be a little bit ironically true though, like especially life coaches, like, and I know
Yeah.
this is a tangent, but like, be careful you don't fall into the trap. Like, well, Steve, Steven's not the best at maybe selling franchises. Let's throw him into coaching. We can put him there, right?
Yes, you're so right.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah. And by the way, often the person or where they come from is from within the corporate or the company owned location, which is great.
Mhm.
Often that person can be really good at the operational training,
Yep.
and that's where they're going to stay, and they
Yep.
can be awesome at that. But when they're in that, sometimes you start to see, oh my gosh, they've got some of the right DNA and maybe a little bit of the skills, or we just need to coach them more to actually be the business coach, not just the operations coach.
Mhm.
So there's a lot there, but we just kind of gave it a little surface level. But
Mhm.
yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great point.
Well, I wanna lean in on that just a little bit, and then we should probably wrap up sadly, because I think there's a lot more content we could dive into here. But we talked about the life cycle of your franchisees. I personally feel like you also need to have a proper life cycle for your coaches, right? You just kind
Yeah,
of hinted at it, but like you've got
yeah,
that passionate person that maybe came from the corporate store that's really good at the 0 to 6 months, to 12 month coaching. Let's get you operating efficiently.
mhm,
Usually not the right person, not always, but sometimes they're not the right person for the next stage, right?
yep,
Of coaching, but you need to create the training program so you can upskill that person who's got the passion, who's got the know-how
yep,
operationally, who can now learn the maybe the business acumen,
yeah,
teach them how to read a P&L, teach them how to identify issues in their dashboards and metrics and coach someone how to use that
exactly.
to drive a business. That's not that hard, right?
No, and you know what I think people get wrong is they think that they need it. And this will get some people going, I'm sure, but I don't think you need a financial specialist to coach franchisees. That's hitting a fly with a hammer. You need somebody that can get the franchisee to listen to you. And if they have a bigger issue, you go to your team, you find somebody on the team, you bring that person in. There's resources out there, but the number one thing um is really getting like them being able to build a trusting relationship with that coach so that they can help with those things. So,
Mhm.
yeah, you can teach someone how to read a profit and loss and KPIs and all that. And in some ways, that might be good if they're struggle a bit because then they can show the franchisee, I struggled. Here's how I learned it. Like, there's probably something good about that
Yeah,
as long as they eventually get it.
but you don't need an MBA from Harvard to be able to coach a franchise.
Oh,
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, good
yeah,
point. Thanks for reeling that in a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah. Angela, you're fantastic. I mean, I've got a couple of highlights in my head. What are a couple of things that we talked about today you think if you remember nothing else, remember
yeah.
these couple of things? What would you share?
Ooh, so many good things. You are so awesome for asking me that question. I think one big thing is to look at what are you currently calling support? Are you proactively coaching or are you just stuck reactively
Mhm,
answering questions for franchisees? And I guess if you are, there are solutions out there, and that's where
mhm.
there are, and whether it's come to our roundtables and find the answer, or get some help from us, or go out in there and look for it, you're not stuck. That's a big thing. And I think also, oh, there's so many, but I'll just say this one, that we need to think from the start that our franchisees, we can help them be better business owners if the earlier we start that, even in the recruitment process and the initial everything we're doing, you can start that mindset so that they think of where they're going to get to as a business owner, and it doesn't, come out of the blue when they're finally ready and then they resist it.
That's a good point. Yeah, don't wait till year 3 to say, okay, now let's talk about metrics, right?
Yeah, and actually, one last thing, I mean, the number one thing is why AC Inc. exists is that your field teams need proper coaching and training. And again, we're not the only ones out there that we're in franchising, kind of more unique that way, but you can get them some leadership coaching, get them the coaching and training they need to be able to deal with the big issues that come up that we just kind of tend to overlook sometimes.
Yeah, you're spot on. It's why I wanted you to be here with us, Angela.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for imparting some wisdom with us. Yeah, I think what 10, 15 years in franchising. Uh,
Wink, wink.
yeah, wink, wink. No, but thank you for sharing that, guys. Best way to reach you, Angela. Tell everyone,
Yeah.
just as a reminder, where should they
Yeah, if they're
find
looking to reach me specifically, then just find me on LinkedIn at Angela Cote, like just look up Angela Cote, Cote.
you?
But if you're interested in the roundtables or anything we do, the best way is through the website, fieldcoachexperts.com.
I like the new domain, by the way. It's
Thank
perfect.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. We just made it
Well,
up.
yeah, it's
We
great.
call ourselves experts just like everyone else does these days.
Yeah, oh, I should be an expert in something. Thank you for
Yeah.
that tip. Yeah, I'll become one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Angela, thanks again. I sure appreciate you.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. This was awesome.